I went downstairs to take out the trash and caught a glimpse of a familiar car swaying. In the front passenger seat, Nelson's secretary was sitting on his lap, her cheeks flushed. He glanced at me casually and said, "Bernice, I'm just having some fun. Don't make a scene." Later. Same spot, same scene. The woman in the car was now me. He looked at me with red eyes and asked what I was doing. I replied coldly, "Nelson, I'm just having some fun. Don't make a scene." Today was my 6-year anniversary with Nelson. I looked at the cold, elaborate dishes on the table. From the slanting sunset to the neon lights coming on, I had already lost track of how long I'd been waiting. When the clock struck midnight, I stood up, dumped all the dishes into the trash, then packed up the kitchen garbage and took it downstairs. On my way back home, just as I was about to step inside, my attention was drawn to a black luxury car shaking by the flower bed. A sharp sting spread from my chest. I walked over, raised my finger, and knocked on the window with a few firm taps. The swaying stopped. The window rolled down halfway, revealing a young, beautiful face. The girl's cheeks were flushed, her clothes half off. When she saw me, she screamed "Ah!" and buried her face in Nelson's chest. I recognized her. Coral. She was Nelson's new secretary this year, with a sweet, innocent face. But right now, her actions were far from innocent. Nelson, leaning back in the seat, had veins bulging and his brow furrowed, as though he was trying hard to restrain himself. A gust of wind blew through. The nauseating smell from the car spread out. I furrowed my brow and said calmly, "Nelson, we need to talk." Streetlights filtered through the thick branches and leaves, casting a dim glow in the car. Nelson's face was clouded with impatience. "Bernice, I'm just having some fun. Don't make a scene." I was sitting at the bar, downing shot after shot of strong liquor. When Nelson raised the window just now, I started wondering, when did he begin calling me by my full name? I met Nelson when I graduated in my senior year. He's 3 years younger than me. He fell for me at first sight and launched a year-long pursuit. Once we started dating, he loved burying his face in my neck and would act like a spoiled child, saying, "All my firsts were with you. You'd better be responsible for me for life." Yes. I was Nelson's first love. But before him, I had a boyfriend. I was with my ex for 3 years, and we did all the things couples do. Nelson is a very possessive person. He would often ask, when things were getting heated, "Do you love me more, or him?" At first, we fought about it several times. There was even one time I brought up breaking up. At that time, Nelson's eyes were horribly red, tears streaming down his face. He knelt before me, begging me not to break up, swearing he would never act that way again. After that, he treated me even better. At that point, I truly thought I'd be with him for the rest of my life. Until 2 years ago. By then, Nelson had been working in the family business for 2 years. Though he always acted like a child in front of me, he had a great business sense. In just 2 years, he achieved remarkable success and smoothly took over the family enterprise. That year, an intern joined the company. One evening after work, I ran into Nelson having dinner with her at a restaurant. But just 10 minutes before, he told me there was an important meeting at the company and he couldn't pick me up after work. That time, Nelson only had an emotional affair, but I couldn't accept it. I brought up breaking up for the second time. Nelson quickly dismissed the intern and sought my forgiveness. He's a very determined person. And he's ruthless with himself. In the end, that episode ended with him kneeling in the pouring rain downstairs for 3 days, only to be sent to the hospital. After that, things went back to how they were before. But some things, once they start, can never go back to how they were. I don't know when it started, but Nelson seemed to have more and more women around him. And he became more and more reckless. But it never got to the point where it was right in front of me. Maybe he did. I don't know. Just like today, if I hadn't gone to take out the trash, I would never have noticed. The reason I took the day off today and made a huge meal wasn't to try to win him back. I just wanted to have a proper farewell dinner with him. To put a proper end to our relationship, which had changed beyond recognition. Over the past 2 years, I'd had many thoughts of breaking up. But I could never bring myself to say it. Until last night. Last night, I worked late. Just as I left the office, Nelson's friend called. He said Nelson was drunk and asked me to go pick him up. I took a cab to their private room. When I got to the door, I pushed it open just a crack and froze. Because I saw Coral, in a white dress, standing in front of Nelson. She seemed to have just arrived. "You're here? Nelson's been asking for you," she said. The moment I heard that, my heart sank. I watched as Nelson gently pulled her onto his lap and kissed her on the lips. At that moment, I was sure. Nelson had fallen for her. When Nelson loved me, he would look at me with that same gaze, pulling me into his circle, and letting his friends call me his sister-in-law. "Nelson, stop drinking. Bernice will get mad if you go back like this." Coral's sweet voice came through the crack in the door. She did that on purpose. In the past, Nelson would have immediately flipped out if a girl tried to antagonize me like that in front of him. But now, he simply cupped her chin and teased, "Are you jealous?" Coral shyly buried her face in his chest, causing everyone in the room to cheer. "You don't need to worry about Bernice. She's just an old woman, she can't compare to you. He's been with her for so many years, he's probably bored." The things they said in the room were getting worse. My hand trembled on the door handle. Until someone shouted at me, "Bernice." I turned around and saw Oscar's face, which wore a bright, friendly smile. He was the only one of Nelson's friends who was polite to me. He was also the one who called me just now. "Why don't you go in?" Oscar said as he tried to push the door. I stopped him, "I'm leaving. Don't tell Nelson I was here." As I turned to leave, Oscar glanced through the crack and saw Coral sitting on Nelson's lap. He explained, "He's just drunk." I smiled faintly, "Go in, it's fine." Then I turned and walked away. I hurried into the bathroom, fighting the nausea, and threw up violently. Afterward, I stood in front of the mirror, staring at the calm face reflected back. And I thought, it turns out it's not that hard to let go of a once passionate and beautiful love. I knew. The boy who once loved me had long disappeared. On my way home from the bar, I stopped by the convenience store at the entrance to buy a bottle of water. After paying, just as I was about to leave, I suddenly stumbled into a chest that smelled of cold, woody cologne. Ugh. The impact made my forehead hurt. The scent lingering around me felt strangely familiar. I staggered back a step, trying to pull away from the man's embrace. My legs wobbled, and I almost fell. A broad hand landed on my lower back, and the scorching heat from his palm seeped through my thin shirt to my skin, making it feel like it was burning. I steadied myself, but his hand never loosened its grip. "Sorry." Before I could even say, "You can let go of me now," a familiar voice sounded above me. Drinking away a breakup? For a moment, my foggy mind went blank. When I looked up, I saw a cool, gentle face. The man was wearing a white shirt and black pants, with silver-rimmed glasses. He looked refined and elegant. "Reynold? Miss Bernice actually remembers me?" His tone was tinged with sarcasm. This man in front of me was my ex, Reynold. Our breakup wasn't exactly pleasant. The day after we broke up, he immediately went abroad. Today was the first time we had seen each other in 8 years. After Reynold let go of me, I inexplicably reached out and grabbed his arm. "Want to sleep together tonight?" The moment the car door closed, Reynold pressed me against the back seat and kissed me urgently. His passion seemed as intense as it was 8 years ago, and I found it hard to resist. I suddenly regretted the words I had just said. The moment those words left my mouth, I saw a dark, lustful glint in his eyes, along with some other emotions I couldn't quite understand. He coolly confirmed, "Bernice, are you serious?" In that instant, I almost wanted to back out. During our college days, I had seen how wild the seemingly cool and gentle man could be in bed. But then I remembered Nelson's words earlier, "It's just for fun." I nodded. If he could play, why couldn't I? Then everything spun, and Reynold lifted me off the ground. His husky voice rang in the car, "Focus." My ear stung as his teeth grazed it, and I snapped back to reality. I frowned and pushed him away, "Don't bite me." Reynold was always dominant in bed. If I ever lost focus for even a second, he'd bite me as punishment. His voice was low and husky, "Focus, and I won't bite you." With that, he immediately took my earlobe in his mouth. I immediately lost my voice. the soft and lingering kiss, threw me off balance. It felt like we were back in the days when we were dating. In a daze, I heard him say, "Let's go to my place." He stood up to open the car door. I stopped him. "I want to stay in the car." He froze. I knew exactly why he reacted that way. Our breakup had something to do with the car. During our relationship, Reynolds had an almost obsessive desire for my body. His needs in that regard were overwhelming, and I couldn't handle it. The tipping point was one night when he went too far, and I broke down in tears and suggested we break up. Reynolds apologized profusely and spent a month trying to win me back. After we got back together, he became much more restrained. We resumed our relationship as before. Until one time, he took me to the mountain top to watch the stars. I was sitting in the passenger seat, and when he kissed me, I had a bad feeling. As expected, while kissing me, he pouted and said, "Just once, okay?" I coldly shook my head. "Reynolds, let's break up." Reynolds came from a prominent family, and he was undoubtedly proud. The next day, he went abroad. Who would have thought that one careless remark in our youth would cause us to break up? You won't regret it. Along with Reynolds' words came the sound of a metal clasp being undone. I turned and sat on Reynolds' lap, tilting his chin up. "What's there to regret? You haven't tried it yet." Then I suddenly realized that I had forgotten to ask if he had a girlfriend. Before I could ask, Reynolds spoke first. "Have you ever tried it?" I shook my head. "No, that's why I want to try." Reynolds didn't respond, but silently reached for the buttons on my shirt. I stopped his hand. He looked up. "Regretting it?" "I just wanted to ask if you have a girlfriend." "I don't touch men who are already in a relationship." Reynolds' tone was suggestive, the spot still open. "Do you want to be my girlfriend?" I ignored his invitation and confirmed once more with him. "Do you have it in the car?" Reynolds' Adam's apple bobbed as he answered, "Yes." Upon hearing this, I kissed Reynolds' lips. My initiative seemed to surprise him. He paused for a moment before reclaiming control. His kissing skills were still superb. As the alcohol in my system hit me again, I completely succumbed to Reynolds' kiss. When I finally gave in to him, a single tear slid down my cheek. "Are you uncomfortable?" Seeing me cry, Reynolds gently cupped my face and asked, just like before. He was sweating lightly, clearly struggling to hold back, but not daring to make a move. I suddenly remembered how, back in college, every time I showed any sign of discomfort after we made up, Reynolds would immediately stop. But now, he wasn't my boyfriend anymore, so I wouldn't let my anger out on him. I turned my head slightly, my voice cold. "No, keep going. Don't make it feel like a cold transaction." His words instantly made me lose all desire to continue. I tried to get up, but he stopped me. "Are you angry again?" Reynolds sighed, a bit helpless. "You really won't let yourself lose, will you? Open your mouth." Reynolds' voice was low and sexy. "We're hot and cold, a perfect match." In my foggy state, I only heard those words before I lost consciousness completely. I had no idea that after I passed out, Reynolds held me gently, his lingering kisses on my lips, unwilling to let go. In the bathroom, the sound of water flowing could be heard. Nelson was leaning on the bed, a cigarette dangling from his fingers, looking satisfied. He unlocked his phone. At the top of his messages was a conversation with Bernice, but not a single message was new. He felt inexplicably irritated. He hadn't planned to be downstairs today, but he couldn't resist. No woman had ever been as perfectly matched with him as Coral was in this regard. She was obedient and considerate. Unlike Bernice, who was always so proud, both in life and in bed, like a nun, rather boring. He rubbed his forehead and sent a message. "I won't be coming back tonight." The message went unanswered for a while, but Nelson didn't mind. Soon after, his sister Erica called. "What's up? You still haven't picked up that ruby necklace I asked you to take photos of? Aren't you giving it to Bernice as a 6-year anniversary gift?" Erica's words made Nelson pause in his cigarette. He pulled the phone away from his ear. June 19th. Only then did he remember that yesterday was the 6-year anniversary of his relationship with Bernice. That morning, before he left, Bernice had been unusually gentle, helping him tie his tie and asking him to come home early for dinner. But he had a late meeting, so he ended up being busy. Coral lived in the same complex, so he returned with her. It all spiraled out of control downstairs. Thinking of Bernice's cold gaze when the car window went down, Nelson suddenly felt uneasy. Bernice has been with you for 6 years. Your parents like her. Don't mess around too much, and marry her soon. I know, the proposal is already being prepared. Nelson hung up the phone. He stared at the message window for a long time, but eventually sent nothing. He was just having some fun outside. When he was done, he would marry her. Plus, her family's business needed his support. She couldn't live without him. Nelson. A voice called from the bedroom. Nelson looked up. Coral was wrapped in a white towel, a pink bunny ear headband on her head, looking at him shyly. His throat tightened, and his eyes darkened as he immediately shoved thoughts of Bernice aside. When I woke up, the room was already bright. I had quite a bit to drink yesterday, and my head still feels a little dizzy. Suddenly, I felt a tightness around my waist. I was pulled into a scorching hot embrace. You're awake? The familiar voice reached my ears, unlocking a wild memory that had been buried in my mind, and my cheeks burned. Normally, with my temperament, I would never do something so bold. I was born into a second-rate aristocratic family. I've known since childhood that I would have an arranged marriage, and my upbringing has always been strict. My mother often taught my sister and me that as girls, we must love ourselves. That's why I've always been particularly conservative in these matters. Nelson is someone who enjoys seeking thrills and dislikes my conservatism. I looked at Reynolds and said, "Could you help me get a new outfit? The one I wore yesterday was completely unwearable." Reynolds' words made me widen my eyes. He said, "I'll bring it to you on Monday." I suddenly became stammering. I need to go home. Today is Saturday, and he said Monday. Does that mean I can't leave for the whole weekend? Reynolds' hand was placed on the pillow, and the hand on my waist tightened. Suddenly, I was pressed even closer to him. Bernice, you started this. Do you really want to just leave like this? I seemed to detect a hint of grievance in his voice. Damn. I must still be drunk. Finally, I managed to squeeze out these words from my throat. I have a boyfriend. Reynolds' eyes curled with a mischievous smile. So what if you have one? It's not like you can't break up. I pressed down on the hand that was still moving lower, nearly grinding my teeth in frustration. Reynolds, after all these years, you really haven't changed at all. Bernice, you've changed quite a lot, Reynolds sneered coldly. You can tolerate your boyfriend's frequent cheating now. My body stiffened. At that moment, I felt like a fish on a chopping board, with all my vulnerabilities laid bare before Reynolds. The breakup with Reynolds had been unpleasant. Those humiliations were the last thing I wanted him to know. But with Nelson's scandalous behavior, who in the social circle doesn't know? My parents just urged me to be understanding. A powerful family like the Nelsons. If I married into them, I'd be set for life. Seeing my cold expression, Reynolds grabbed my hand and kissed it lightly. Want to marry me? I looked up sharply. Why? In the capital social circles, Reynolds' family was even wealthier than the Nelsons. When I first got involved with him, I didn't know about his background. So when he took me home, I even thought about running away. But to my surprise, his family was kind and warmly received me. Later, when Reynolds and I broke up, his mother even came to see me, asking if he had upset me. Reynolds tilted his chin. Because you're the only one I feel anything for. Reynolds had a cold, refined face, looking elegant and polite, but in reality, he was a well-dressed beast. Whether it's my character, my family background, or, Reynolds paused, leaning closer, my looks. I'm far better than Nelson. Think about it. Reynolds' voice was light, almost like a joke, but his gaze was serious. I was certain he was serious. The offer was tempting, especially since he was someone I had deeply loved 8 years ago. So I didn't hesitate. I gave him my answer quickly. All right. The reason I hadn't broken up with Nelson until now was partly because I did indeed need an advantageous marriage. Compared to other potential matches my family introduced, I thought Nelson was a better choice. I had long tried to detach my feelings for Nelson and see him purely as a marriage prospect. I tried, but I couldn't do it. Nelson and I had many wonderful memories. I couldn't force myself to treat him as just a marriage partner. I needed to end it completely. Instead of starting a new relationship, a good marriage partner was what I needed right now. Reynolds' eyes sparkled with excitement. You agreed? I looked at him, and it felt like I was back on the day he confessed to me. That day, he had looked at me with those bright, puppy-like eyes. I was planning to break up with Nelson yesterday, but he didn't go home. He was with his secretary downstairs. Reynolds' tone became serious. Bernice, once you agree, you can't go back on it. Of course, I wouldn't go back on my word. Marrying him would bring nothing but benefits for me. Bernice, it's still early. Reynolds' voice dropped, and I was flipped over. He pressed himself against my back, gently yet firmly. The next time I woke up, it was already dark outside. I grabbed my phone, planning to send Nelson a breakup message. This relationship that had lasted for 6 years, I originally wanted to end it face to face. But since he was so busy, I had no choice but to do it through my phone. I searched for a long time but couldn't find Nelson's name until I finally found him on the blacklist. Let's break up, idiot. I burst out laughing when I saw the message I'd sent in the afternoon. Reynolds could be so childish. A cold voice suddenly cut in. What are you looking at? I jolted, and the phone slipped from my hand, landing on the bed. He picked it up, and I could immediately sense the tension in the air. This kind of garbage, don't waste your time on it. He turned off my phone. Tomorrow night is our family banquet. You're coming with me. I gasped, so soon? Reynolds shrugged. They're pushing for it. I thought to myself, this is really too fast. Tomorrow during the day, I'll come to your place. Reynolds kept talking, and I felt dizzy. In the private room, Nelson stared at the red exclamation mark in the chat box, unable to believe it. Bernice had actually blocked him. Oscar, sitting next to him, saw the phone and couldn't help but smirk. She blocked you? Oscar's words were like a stone thrown into a calm lake, drawing everyone's attention. She actually blocked you. Didn't you plan to propose to her? How can she be so unreasonable? Another friend patted his shoulder. Nelson, you've gone too far this time. It's no wonder Bernice is upset. In the past, Nelson's affairs usually didn't last more than a month. But this time it had been over 3 months, and he even moved into the same neighborhood as Bernice. Did Bernice get mad at you? A cautious voice came from the door. Oscar immediately hated the sight of Coral's face, so bland, not even a fraction as attractive as Bernice. Yet Nelson treated her like treasure. Oscar sneered. Your mistress is worried about whether the wife is angry? Coral immediately reddened, holding back tears. Nelson shot Oscar a warning glance. Shut up. The room fell silent, with only Coral's sobs filling the air. Nelson waved at Coral, his voice softening. Don't mind him, come here. Coral obediently walked over, taking Nelson's hand and sitting on his lap. Oscar was so furious that his chest felt tight. He stood up abruptly, kicking the table hard. If you keep going like this, Bernice will leave you one day. Nelson's heart sank. His face darkened. She won't leave me. The next day, when I brought Reynolds home, my parents were both stunned. When they found out the reason Reynolds was here, they immediately broke into wide, flattering smiles, extremely obsequious. They thought I wanted to marry Nelson only because of his family background. Now, here was someone better than Nelson, who was ready to marry me right away. Of course, they quickly dismissed Nelson. In the past 2 years, Nelson's reputation had taken a hit, and whenever I came home, my mom would always try to console me, advising me to hold on to his heart. They were afraid I might not be able to enter the Nelson family. And that I'd have trouble finding a better marriage prospect in the future. After a round of enthusiastic hospitality from my parents and Reynolds' promises to treat me well, we finally set off for his house. As I stepped into his house again, I was just as nervous as when I first came. Reynolds took my hand and said, "My parents won't eat you." When I didn't respond, he added, "I won't eat you either." I shot him a look. Can you speak more seriously? Do you want me to eat you here? Reynolds always managed to rile me up with just a few words. I wasn't usually such an impulsive person, but he had this ability to get under my skin. When I saw Reynolds' parents again, I was still nervous. But they were as warm and kind as when I first visited. Bernice, I'm so happy for you too, finally making up. You don't know how badly he cried the day you broke up with him. Mom. Reynold could no longer maintain his calm when his mother suddenly exposed him. You still know how to be embarrassed? Reynolds' mother grabbed my hand and continued. He knew you were in a relationship, so he flew back from abroad that same night and cried in his room all night. At that point, I seriously doubted if such a hopeless son could really be mine. But this time, at least he moved quickly. Reynolds' mother's words left me completely stunned. I glanced over at Reynold, but he quickly looked away, avoiding my gaze. Did Reynold still like me? I'm really happy to see you two working things out. Tomorrow is Monday, you two should go register your marriage. At that moment, I didn't see it, but Reynolds' mother raised an eyebrow at him. After we left his house, Reynold drove me to the place I used to live with Nelson to pick up my things. Since hearing those words from Reynolds' mother, I was still in a state of shock. Reynold suddenly spoke up, "Are you scared?" I frowned. What? Reynold continued, "About me liking you." I hadn't expected Reynold to be so direct, but it was actually very in line with his character. Back in college, Reynold and I met on the first day of school, and we were officially together a week later. I quietly asked, "Why?" "Bernice, I told you, when I like someone, I'll like them for the rest of my life." The image of the young man from my memories overlapped with the mature man in front of me, and my heart began to race. It felt like my heart hadn't skipped a beat in such a long time. When we got back to the place I used to share with Nelson, it looked just like it did the day I moved out. It seemed like Nelson hadn't come back in the past couple of days. I knew Coral lived in this neighborhood. At the thought of those two, I felt no stirring in my heart. I quickly packed my things and headed downstairs. Reynold was about to come up with me, but I knew his petty nature well. If he came up, he might cause trouble. He placed my things in the back seat, but then, to my surprise, he opened the passenger door. I immediately understood his intentions. I wanted to refuse, but seeing his pitiful expression, I couldn't bring myself to. 8 years had passed. Both Reynold and I had grown so much. His passion still left me helpless, but I didn't dislike it, and I was gradually starting to love the feeling. In the past, I didn't like Reynolds' wildness. A part of me thought he was just venting his hormones on me, without caring who the other person was. I always thought tenderness was the proof of true love. At that time, I had taken too many things for granted. As the emotions deepened, my fingers slid into the gaps between Reynolds, locking our hands together. Knock, knock, knock. Suddenly, the car window was knocked on, and my body tensed up. It occurred to me that Reynolds' car was parked in Nelson's spot. I quickly pressed the button to lower the window. It only went down a third. Outside the window stood Nelson and Coral. When Nelson saw me, he froze. I was wearing a shirt dress, with 3 buttons undone. Reynold raised his hand and pressed me down. "Is there something you want, Mr. Nelson?" he said, his voice dripping with provocation. If he had a tail, I would have sworn it was sticking straight up. "Bernice, what are you doing?" Nelson's angry voice came through the crack in the window. I rubbed my ears and raised my face to meet Nelson's furious eyes. "Nelson, I'm just having some fun, stop making a scene." After we returned to Reynolds' villa, he pinned me to the bathroom counter. His gaze was fierce. "Fun? What do you want to play at?" I sighed, feeling helpless. I had only wanted to vent. When Nelson heard what I said, his face turned pale, and I felt a sense of satisfaction at getting back at him. He always thought I couldn't live without him, so he acted recklessly. But when I truly left, he suddenly pretended to be the heartbroken one. What a joke. I looked up at Reynold through misty eyes. "You don't want to play with me for the rest of your life?" Reynolds' dark, shiny eyes suddenly lit up. He cupped my face with his hands, serious and earnest. "Baby, we're going to get our marriage license tomorrow." That night, I don't even know when I fell asleep. When I regained my senses, I was already outside the Civil Affairs Bureau. I didn't expect that just over the weekend I'd become a married woman. Reynold wrapped his arm around my shoulder and leaned down to plant a heavy kiss on my cheek. Changes always come so suddenly. When Nelson's fist landed on Reynolds' face, I didn't even react at first. "Nelson, what are you doing?" I rushed to steady the staggering Reynold. Nelson's eyes were full of hurt. Bernice, you're actually yelling at me for him? Hearing him call my name again, I found it laughable. As my attention wavered, Reynolds immediately leaned in closer. Baby, my face hurts so much. Nelson looked like an enraged lion. Who the hell are you calling baby? We're married now. She's my wife. Reynolds raised the marriage certificate in his hand. The murderous aura in Nelson's eyes seemed to disappear in an instant. He struggled to shift his gaze to me. You got married? I nodded. When Nelson tried to grab my hand, Reynolds raised his hand and punched him. Nelson didn't back down. The two of them started fighting right in front of the Civil Affairs Bureau. Reynolds might appear cold and elegant on the outside, but underneath, he was the complete opposite. When he fought, he didn't hold back one bit. Seeing the crowd of onlookers grow, I quickly grabbed Reynolds' arm. Stop, let's go home. Reynolds furrowed his brow slightly, but still stopped. Nelson, let me warn you. Don't bother my wife again. If I see you once, I'll beat you once. He finished, took my hand, and turned to leave. Bernice, don't leave me. Nelson's panicked voice came from behind. I felt his grip tighten on my hand. But I didn't stop walking. Nelson, I've long since stopped needing you. After getting into the car, Reynolds' face remained sour the whole time. At first, I tried to comfort him a little. He didn't respond. I'm no good at comforting people, so I just sat there silently in the passenger seat, picking at my fingers. Reynolds shot me an angry glance and said, "Aren't you going to try to comfort me?" He looked like a big dog who's been wronged. I asked you why you're angry, but you didn't say anything. Couldn't you have asked a couple more times? If you asked 2 more times, I would have told you. I couldn't help but laugh. Reynolds, how can you still be so childish? Nelson's not childish? He's got you, a great girlfriend, and he's out there chasing after that kind of woman. I propped my chin up with both hands, tilted my head, and smiled teasingly. Are you jealous? Yeah, I am. Why does he get to be liked by you, and not me? Reynolds' answer was always unexpected. I thought he might at least try to act tough. I've never liked him, I said. Oh. I watched Reynolds struggle to suppress a smile, his lips twitching, and I couldn't help but smile too. Reynolds pretended not to care. So you like me now? He really made me laugh. Where did you get that idea? You agreed to marry me. Isn't that proof you like me? I grinned wide, showing all my teeth. But then, when I saw his hand gripping the steering wheel, trembling slightly, my heart felt a little tight. Yeah, I like you. Right now. Screech. The car suddenly slammed to a stop at the side of the road. Reynolds unbuckled his seatbelt, cupped my face, and kissed me. The next day. When I walked out of the office, I spotted the black luxury car right away. My assistant patted me on the shoulder. Boss, your boyfriend's here to pick you up after work. She sounded a bit surprised. When we first started dating, Nelson would pick me up rain or shine, every day without fail. Everyone in the company knew Nelson was completely crazy about me. I smiled casually. We'd broken up. My assistant looked shocked. I waved the ring on my finger. I'm married now. She was so stunned, she couldn't say anything. Finally, she just muttered, "Congratulations." I didn't want to get tangled up with Nelson anymore, but he wouldn't let me go. As I tried to walk past him, he grabbed my wrist. I spoke in a calm voice, no trace of a smile on my face. Let go. Bernice, I don't agree with the breakup. His grip tightened, and I winced in pain. You don't need to agree. I've already informed you, I said. I wasn't very strong, and after struggling for a while, I couldn't break free. I've dealt with Coral. I won't see other women anymore. Don't break up with me. He was looking at me with red eyes, pleading, just like when I first proposed the breakup. When I used to like him, I'd feel sorry for him when he begged like this. But now, I didn't feel any sympathy. In fact, I felt disgusted by his insincerity. Nelson, you're disgusting. In that instant, his face went pale as a sheet. He opened his mouth, but I cut him off. You're only mad because I'm not your first, and now you're out looking for other women to balance things out, right? He didn't say anything. Because I was right. The reason he started looking for women outside our relationship was because he felt all his firsts were given to me. He couldn't accept it. I told you in our first year together, if you can't accept it, we can break up. You said you didn't mind, but what have you done? Nelson panicked, grabbing my hand. Bernice, I was wrong. I was just too jealous. I was jealous that others got to have you before me. Let's get married, and after we're married, I won't look for anyone else. I was disgusted. I'm already married. Please don't bother me anymore. My husband will get jealous. Nelson still didn't let go. He held on tightly, his eyes welling up. Reynold just came back to the country. You're just using him to mess with me, I know it. I couldn't help but laugh. Nelson, as usual, wanted to live in his own little world. I pried his fingers off one by one and said slowly, he's my first love, the one you've been jealous of for 6 years. The moment I said that, the expression on Nelson's face cracked completely. He suddenly went crazy and pulled me into a tight hug. No, I don't want to break up. Bernice, don't leave me. He acted like a child who thought throwing a tantrum and causing a scene would get him what he wanted. You've been broken up for 8 years, and we've been living together for 4 years. He's never going to be okay with it. The last trace of any affection I had for him vanished at that moment. I looked at him coldly. He's not like you. Reynold, despite being a bit extreme in some areas, never put me down with his words. When he likes someone, he says it. When he's bothered by something, he says it. He doesn't keep it buried inside. Suddenly, I felt a strong pull, and before I knew it, Nelson was yanked away from me and knocked to the ground with one punch. His lip was cut, and blood started to drip. When Reynold raised his foot to kick him, I grabbed him. Don't waste your time with someone like him. Reynold, usually so polite and composed in front of others, was visibly furious now. He spat and pointed at Nelson. Don't think just because you're a jerk, every man in the world is like you. You're so disgusting, acting all innocent while you sleep around. You probably crawled out of a pigsty, huh? You're revolting. It was the first time I'd ever seen Reynold curse, and I couldn't help but stare in shock. It was rush hour, and there were plenty of people outside the building. I pulled Reynold toward the car. Once inside, Reynold was still grumbling angrily. He looked like he was about to explode. I couldn't hold it in and burst out laughing. You're even more worked up than I am. Reynold snorted and leaned toward me, rubbing his cheek against mine. What kind of person does he think he is, talking to you like that? He's out of his mind. There's no point in getting upset over him. I touched Reynold's face. He grabbed my hand and kissed it a few times. While I was working, I was also planning my wedding. One day, I went to the hospital to pick up a health report and ran into an old friend, Erica. She grabbed my arm and asked me to go see a friend with her. Since Erica had been kind to me before, I agreed to go along. On the way, she kept talking, telling me Coral had been fired and that Nelson had spread the word that no company would hire her anymore. I felt a little bit sorry for her. I hadn't expected Nelson to take it out on Coral. He and Coral were both to blame, but when things went wrong, he'd always shift the responsibility. Nelson was still as immature as ever. His immaturity was different from Reynold's. Reynold would only throw tantrums in front of her, but Nelson would lash out indiscriminately. He only cared about his own happiness, whether that meant seeking excitement outside or making things hard for Coral now. When we reached the hospital room, Erica told me only to go in. Bernice, he's here for a stomach ulcer. Can you come see him? I pushed the door open, and the sound of someone crying instantly filled my ears. Bernice, I didn't force you to get married, so why are you blaming me? Get out. Nelson's voice was the angriest I'd ever heard. Coral, tearfully looking up, saw me and immediately started crying harder. She scowled. What are you doing here? Are you satisfied now? Nelson followed her gaze, and the anger on his face instantly faded, replaced by a soft look in his eyes. That look made me feel disgusted. I walked up to Coral and sneered, you knew this man had a girlfriend, yet you still became his mistress. Are you proud of it? It seemed like my words took her by surprise. It took me a while to realize, and I looked at Nelson, seeking help. But in Nelson's eyes, she was already gone. Coral finally covered her face and ran out of the hospital room. Bernice, the engagement ring will be here tomorrow. Will you divorce and marry me? Nelson's eyes were filled with pleading. I dodged the hand he extended and mocked, aren't you the one who cared so much about a first time? Could it be that, even in your second marriage, you want it? Nelson's already pale face turned even paler. Nelson always cared that I wasn't a virgin, and he repeatedly brought it up. In fact, even after he started seeing other women, he only sought out young girls who hadn't been touched. In panic, Nelson stammered, "No, that's not it. I was just jealous. I didn't mean to look down on you." I looked at Nelson and said, "I was diagnosed with depression 3 years ago." Nelson was stunned and looked at me in shock. 2 years ago, when you cheated on me with the first girl, I took a bottle of sleeping pills. An entire bottle. A wave of panic engulfed Nelson as he looked at me like a child caught in a mistake, helpless. That time, Nelson took that girl on a boat trip that lasted over a week. If my sister hadn't come to find me, maybe my life would have ended then. You always bring up how I wasn't your first. You say you don't mind, but it always felt like you were doing me a favor by being with me. It made me think I was a terrible person, and I wanted to end my life. Luckily, fate gave me another chance. After waking up in the hospital, I began seeing a therapist and actively underwent treatment. It took me almost 2 years to finally recover. Nelson held his head in his hands, looking agonized. I'm sorry. I didn't know. Why didn't you tell me? I scoffed. Nelson, you're still the same. Whenever something goes wrong, it's always someone else's fault. I left the depression report right on the bedside table. If you'd paid even a little attention, you would have seen it. Nelson shook his head. No, Bernice, the only person I love is you. Those women were just flings. I was already planning to propose. I stood up. Nelson, your love is too cheap. I won't accept it, and I don't want it. As I turned to leave, Nelson ripped the needle from his arm, rolled off the bed, and tried to grab me. Bernice, don't go. I turned back for one last glance at Nelson. If you truly loved me, you would never show up in front of me again. When I see you, I feel disgusted. The last spark of light in Nelson's eyes completely disappeared. Hearing a noise outside the hospital room, Erica pushed the door open. Seeing her brother on the floor, she glanced at me and asked, Bernice, is it really impossible? I raised a smile. I'm planning my wedding right now. I'll send you an invitation when the time comes. As I walked out of the hospital, Reynold was standing there with his hands in his pockets. I quickened my pace toward him. When I reached him, he pulled me into an embrace around my waist. You're not allowed to see him again. He's a crazy man obsessed with someone else's wife. The setting sun bathed us in its glow, and our shadows stretched long. I turned my head to look at Reynold. His eyes were filled with heat and affection, just like when we were 18. End of the main story. Bonus chapter, Reynold. If I had known that a sudden whim would lead to a breakup, I would never have said those things in the car. I loved Bernice. I loved her madly. Every time I saw her, I just wanted to be close to her. She was particularly conservative in this regard. Although I wanted to be with her as soon as possible, I still wanted to wait for the day she was ready. On my 20th birthday, she agreed. I was ecstatic. I couldn't control my strong feelings for her. It seemed like she wasn't as enthusiastic. After that, we argued more often. Most of the time, it was about this issue. I tried to control myself, but every time I touched her, all my rationality fell apart. Then she brought up breaking up, and I panicked. Luckily, in the end, she forgave me. But the good times didn't last. The day we went to the mountain to watch the stars, I impulsively said I wanted to try it in the car. This time, she decisively broke up with me. She said I disrespected her. She said she hated me. She hated every time I touched her. When I heard her say, I hate you, my mind went blank. My pride was wounded, and I left the country in shame. Every day abroad, I missed her like crazy, and I wanted to return. But I was afraid of seeing her cold, determined eyes. 2 years later, the worst thing happened, she was in a relationship. I bought a plane ticket back to the country overnight and spent an entire day waiting outside her company to finally see her. She still looked as beautiful as ever. She just seemed a bit more mature. When I saw Nelson's hand around her waist, I wanted to immediately get out of the car and punch him. The way she looked at him with light in her eyes reminded me of how she used to look at me when we were in love. I left the country again in shame. I didn't dare follow her news in the country. It wasn't until 6 years later that I heard about Nelson's outrageous behavior from a friend. I quickly arranged my work in the overseas branch and rushed back. On the first night back, I found out she was at a bar. When she bumped into me after paying, I froze. 8 years. This was the first time I had touched her. When she asked, "Do you want to sleep together?" I was both angry that she was being so casual with herself, yet I couldn't stop my blood boiling. After all, I was going to marry her, so it shouldn't be considered a one-night stand, right? At worst, it was getting on the train before buying the ticket. Luckily, I had the foresight to always carry a condom. When I had her again, I felt a sting in my nose. 8 years, and she was finally back by my side. She was still as delicate as ever. When she fainted, I slapped myself in frustration. I couldn't hold back. I wondered how I could avoid making her angry tomorrow. But unexpectedly, she wasn't angry. I took the chance and proposed a marriage alliance. During the time I waited for her reply, my heart almost jumped out of my chest. She said yes. I was so afraid she would change her mind that I made sure to meet both our families that day and got our marriage certificate on Monday. But then that annoying Nelson showed up again. I had been wanting to hit Nelson for a long time, so I went all out. I wanted to beat his face to a pulp. How dare he treat my wife like that? What a scumbag. On the way back, I got her confession. I felt like a bird that had built a nest and was happily flying in the sky. On our wedding day, I cried like a fool. My friends said I lost all my face. What did it matter? I had a wife. Now, Bernice and I have been married for 8 years. We have a daughter. She's as beautiful as her mother. I watched her walk out of the building, dressed in a white blouse and black skirt, and I walked toward her. She linked her arm with mine and smiled, asking, "Did you leave work early again?" "Baby, today is our 8-year anniversary." Okay, I won't criticize you today." I helped her into the car, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw a black car not far away. I didn't need to look to know who it was. Since the hospital incident, Nelson hadn't shown up in front of my wife again. He had changed his strategy. He always lurked in the shadows, watching Bernice secretly. At first, I was annoyed, but then I thought, it's not bad if it makes him suffer. After all, he used to bully my wife. Once we got in the car, I leaned in and kissed Bernice on the cheek, saying, "I love you." As she fastened her seatbelt, she replied, "I love you too." My heart raced. Her confession. No matter how many times I hear it, I always feel moved. The end.